So as of right now, like this current moment in time where I'm sitting here talking into a microphone, Street Fighter VI has been out for 3 weeks. I wanted to give this game some time to marinate before I sat down and talked about it in a YouTube video, especially since my experience with the game before it came out was basically non-existent. I streamed myself playing the demo when it came out, and that was the only time I played it. I watched barely any content on the game before it dropped, and I didn't sign up for any of the betas. I don't give a fuck how good your game is, you'll never trick me into checking my email. But for the most part, I just wanted to wait for the game to fully release, spend some time with it when it did, and whenever I felt ready, share what I thought about it. And I gotta say, what I think about it is that this is a really fucking good game. So, first of all, I want to talk about the gameplay, because this is definitely a game, and boy, have I been playing it. And I think the first thing that it makes sense to talk about is the characters you actually play that game with. And right off the bat, I want to give this game's roster some credit. For a start, the game has 18 characters at launch. And not only is that pretty solid, you know, fighting game rosters have generally been getting smaller and smaller over time, you know, it is what it is. But I think having more characters at launch than Street Fighter V was a really smart move. Street Fighter V having 16 characters at launch, in hindsight, wasn't really that bad or anything, but given the state of the game at launch, it was kinda just another nail in the coffin. Street Fighter VI making the effort to have more than that right out the gate definitely kind of shows a sign of, you know, wanting to improve, and there's a lot of that in this game. As for the characters that actually make up that roster, I was a little iffy on them at first, but it's grown on me a ton. First off, the abundance of new characters is brilliant. I greatly appreciate that, and I love pretty much all of the new characters, at least on a visual level. People have been real fucking mean to Lily lately, I don't know where that came from. Leave her alone, she's literally just a little scrunkly bunkly. Like, oh, she looks like a child. Okay, are children not allowed to fucking hit people with clubs now? Mind your own fucking business. Originally, I wasn't a huge fan of the abundance of Street Fighter II characters, especially given that there were no Street Fighter III characters and this game takes place directly after Street Fighter III. But in hindsight, I think it actually kinda works. These characters are definitely all very familiar at this point, which could have been super boring depending on how they handled it. But I think the fact that all of these characters are so visually different from how we're used to does a lot for them. They really feel like an evolved form of these characters, and that ties in really well with their gameplay actually. A lot of these characters have, you know, rather obscure returning moves, they've got brand new moves. At least from a story perspective, these characters definitely feel like the most powerful versions of themselves. And that kind of makes it feel less like, oh, it's this fucking character again, and more like, wow, it's nice to see how far this character has come, isn't it? Luke and Jury are also here, and they're grand. The public opinion doing a complete 180 on Luke is brilliant, like it's so fun. He's just a fucking goober now, and I'm all for it. I like Luke a lot, which I wouldn't have said in Street Fighter V, I just kind of thought he was fine. And then Jury, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I actually kind of like Jury. In 4 and 5, I just kind of saw her as just another boring edgy character with nothing to them. But in Street Fighter VI, she's just an actual fucking gremlin, and I don't know, I think that's a lot more fun. She's not like my favorite character in the world or anything, but like, if you're gonna put Jury in video games, you might as well do it like this. This is more fun in my opinion. Now, when it comes to how these characters actually play, I don't actually have a ton to say, because despite the fact that I've had so much time with this game, every single solitary second of it has gone into a single character and absolutely nobody else. And that's this guy. So far, every single solitary second I've spent on Street Fighter VI has been spent with everyone's favorite dripped out, dilfed out, keep out king, JP. And honestly, I'm pretty fucking happy about it. This guy's great. I genuinely can't believe that a character like JP is in a Street Fighter game. I don't think we've ever really had anything like this before. People have called him an NRS character, and I totally see it. He's basically a set play zoner, which is the nice way of saying zoner with some of the goofiest fucking tools you've ever seen in your life slapped on top. Most zoners in Street Fighter would have like 1 or 2 projectiles, and inputting those projectiles with different button strengths would give you different speeds for those projectiles, and maybe you'd have a way of giving a projectile more hits or something like that. JP is playing a completely fucking different game. All three versions of JP's basic projectile travel at essentially the same speed. The light kick version is a mid that knocks down on hit and hits 4 frames sooner, while medium and heavy hit overhead and low respectively. He can also fake all of his projectiles, which turned out to be way better than I was expecting, and of course he's got a command grab projectile, because why not? He's also got a ground spike, which is another great zoning tool, anti-zoning tool, and combo ender, and then he's got portals, which he can either wait to automatically launch a spike from, which tracks the opponent, launch the spike himself early, which is plus 10 on block, or just fucking teleport to the portal and do some shitty shit. The portals are without a doubt my favourite aspect of the character. They lead to some very funny interactions, and you can set them on specific knockdowns to get things like overhead low mix, combos off throw. It's really, really fun. He's also got this one other special move, which is very interesting. He's got this counter, and the meterless version is whatever, you know, it's striking vol on frame 3, and if it gets triggered, it summons a bomb that tracks the opponent. But the EX version, kind of one of the most notorious moves in the game at the moment. This is a parry, but it's frame 1 strike and throw invincible, and it summons 2 bombs. It's an incredibly weird move that I always feel a little bit evil using. Honestly, I haven't practiced a ton of stuff when it comes to, like, actually getting a significant combo or mix-up off this, but trust me, it's pretty fucking nasty. Now, JP is notoriously a bit of a fucking nightmare for new players, but overall, I've no idea how good of a character he actually is. On one hand, people are discovering a lot of counterplay to his stuff, but then again, this is a character who's going to develop a lot over time, right? People are just going to find goofier and goofier shit with him, so who knows? Unfortunately for you, I am a mid-level player with a YouTube channel, so I'm going to subject you to a tier list regardless. Here you go, this is fact, I said so. Now, moving on to the core gameplay, it does feel pretty familiar for the most part, but there are some key differences compared to Street Fighter V that I'll just touch on real quick. I think one of the most important ones, and one that I've come to really like, is that plus on block normals are significantly rarer in this game. Most characters only have 1 or 2, and they're often pretty slow. JP, for example, only has 1 plus on block button, and it's his 12 frame standing heavy kick. And even then, there's plenty of characters who have no plus on block buttons at all, which is kinda wild to think about. Generally, if you want plus frames in this game, you're relying on certain special moves that are plus on block, but either require meter or lose to some universal mechanic, or, like, you're using Drive Rush, which we'll get there when we get there. For the vast majority of the cast, throw loops are back, and this is definitely one of the more controversial aspects of the game, but personally I'm fine with it for the most part. One of the big reasons I'm more okay with throw loops here is the removal of traditional stun. It gets rid of a lot of those guess for game scenarios, and I do really appreciate that. And on top of that, throws have more recovery on whiff, so it's easier to punish them on like a walk back or a backdash, and jumping throws is occasionally a lot more rewarding. Speaking of throws, they can now counter hit the opponent, which is quite interesting. This is important for dealing with some of the new system mechanics, and also, there's a new type of counter hits that is sort of an answer to crush counter. Kind of. Sort of. So you've got traditional counter hits, which add 2 frames of hit stun typically, but now you've got punish counter on top of that. Punish counter only applies when hitting the opponent out of a move's recovery rather than its startup frames. There you'll just get a traditional counter hit. Unlike normal counter hits, punish counters usually add 4 frames of hit stun. Certain moves apply a unique hit effect on punish counter, which can give you significantly more frame advantage, or open up new, interesting, unique combo opportunities. I like this a lot more than crush counter overall, mainly because it doesn't apply when hitting a move out of its startup. It feels a lot less random than crush counter, if that makes sense, even if, you know, crush counter wasn't really random in the first place. You get what I mean. Now, obviously, this game is not just, you know, your typical Street Fighter experience with a few tweaks. There's kind of this whole new entire fucking system in place, called the drive system. And with it comes a lot of cool shit that I am very, very fond of. I think the most notable thing about the drive gauge, right off the bat, is the fact that you start with 6 full bars of drive gauge right out the gate at every single round. Personally, I'm a big fan of this. It's kind of like the opposite of a comeback mechanic. It means that with the exception of like character-specific buffs or supers, your character is technically the most powerful they possibly can be, at the very start of the round, and that's very fun. It makes rounds explosive right out the gate. I enjoy that a lot. It kind of gets around that issue that some people have with Street Fighter V, where certain characters didn't feel complete unless they were in V-Trigger or such like that. It's very fun. I enjoy this a lot. First off, I'd like to talk about Drive Impact, because I'll be real, this was the thing I was most worried about going into Street Fighter VI. Before the game came out, I was worried, like, man, I'm never gonna react to Drive Impact, I'm gonna look like a fucking goober, I'm gonna get beat up by this shit all goddamn day. And listen, when I first played the game, my very first time, that kinda did happen. I was never fucking reacting to it, I was getting splattered against the wall for fucking days. But the very second I reacted to my first Drive Impact, everything changed. And suddenly, I was all for it. My heart. I did a thing correctly. I'm learning. Was that the first time I reacted to it? That might have been the first time I reacted to something. For the entire cast, Drive Impact is a frame 26 attack with 2 hits of armor that is, mid-screen at least, -3 on block. Now, Drive Impact can be massively rewarding. On punish counter you get a crumple, so you can kinda do whatever the fuck you want. And in the corner, even if they block it, the opponent gets wall splattered, and you can combo off that. However, you can't just fucking throw it out willy-nilly, because at the end of the day, it does cost a bar of drive gauge, and also, if the opponent uses their Drive Impact in reaction to your Drive Impact, they get a punish counter, and you just get absolutely fucking beat for it, so, yeah. I was worried about this, but I really enjoy how it's turned out, and in fact, there's like, a little bit more to it than I expected that I'm enjoying. For example, hitting the opponent with Drive Impact, even if it doesn't, like, punish counter, drain some of their drive gauge. So there's something to be said for comboing into Drive Impact, specifically to try and put your opponent into burnout. It's very interesting. There's also some other funny stuff, like raw drive rush into Drive Impact, which I don't think it's that great, but it's very funny, and I do it more than I should, but that's neither here nor there. Drive reversal is quite simple, but still pretty cool. It's this game's answer to V reversal, basically, although what I enjoy about this is that it's universal. In Street Fighter V, V reversals varied wildly across the cast. Some would hit the opponent and knock down, some would hit but leave them standing, some were like dodges, and then it was all a bit strange really. Here, they're all -8 on block and they all act the same, which is good. I have seen some concerns about their speed, like it not being fast enough, like people not even trying to bait it and they just fucking block it anyways and get a full punish. But so far I think it's fine. Also, if you're at like a mid-level, you're probably not going to see a ton of this. While playing Ranked, I went all the way from Gold 3 to Diamond without seeing a single one. And it's only now that I'm trying to climb through Diamond that I'm actually seeing Drive Reversal now and again. It's pretty funny. Now, I won't lie, Drive Parry was definitely my Drive Reversal, because for the longest time, I never fucking used this whatsoever. And that's a shame, because I'm starting to use it more now, implementing it more into my game plan, and I'm a big fan. I like how this turned out. I don't know why I never used it, it just never clicked with me that this game, like, had parries, but how they've gone about it is actually super interesting. Basically, the regular parry is a hold parry, sort of. By holding down both medium buttons, you enter this weird state, and in that state, you parry everything. Well, strikes that is. If they try to throw you, you'll get punish countered. However, parrying stuff doesn't actually change the frame advantage. For example, if a move was -4 on block, it'll also be -4 on regular parry. Although, parry does reduce the pushback, and it allows you to input Drive Rush 2 frames earlier than if you were just blocking, so there is that. Another very interesting aspect of Drive Parry is that it ignores high-low mix. It doesn't matter if the opponent hits you with an overhead or a low, as long as you're holding down parry, you'll just block all of it, which is interesting. While that might seem like a bit of a bummer, it is worth noting that overheads actually feel pretty strong in this game. SF5 had notoriously wimpy overheads, but no, here they're relatively fast, safe on block. They're good-ass moves in this game, and you love to see it. However, if you input parry within 2 frames of an attack connecting, you'll get a perfect parry. Now, what's interesting about perfect parry is that on the surface, yeah, it is just a parry. You parry a thing, and you can act immediately. That's all there is to it. But what's interesting is that if you parry something and you, let's say, go into a combo, that combo will actually start at 50% scaling. And that's pretty rough. That's essentially half the damage you would usually be doing. Now, this can be a little bit demotivating, especially when using perfect parry against moves where perfect parry is one of your only consistent answers, like Honda's butt slam or headbutt. However, I definitely get what they're going for here. Perfect parry is very cool, but you can tell it's not something that the developers want the game to revolve around, right? We don't want like a Mortal Kombat 11 flawless block situation here, so I think the scaling was definitely a good move. I've seen some people who aren't a fan of it, but I think it's fine. And at the very least, it encourages you to kind of experiment with your combos after getting a perfect parry. Like, instead of routing for damage, you route for Oki. Maybe you combo into Drive Impact to drain their drive gauge, you know? You're not going to get that much damage, maybe get something else? Some other cool shit you could get? I don't know. I'm happy with it. If it never changes, I'd be totally fine with that. Now, I did mention that I was pretty fucking scared of Drive Impact before the game dropped. Like, I wasn't sure how well I'd be able to handle it. Turns out what I should have been scared of the whole time was Drive Rush. Because this shit is pretty fucking scary. So, there's two ways you can utilize Drive Rush. You can either use it raw, which uses 1 bar of drive gauge, or you can cancel into it from cancelable normals, which uses 3. Cancelling into it is quite expensive, but it's really good for keeping up pressure, converting off pokes, or opening up new combo opportunities in general, because normals performed after a drive rush not only have 4 extra frames of hit or block stun, but they maintain a juggle state on hit if they would have air reset, which is really fun. That's a very smart decision on Capcom's part. Raw Drive Rush is pretty fucking scary because it's insanely good as an opener, especially at kind of like a mid-level. For a start, if you're just cancelling into Drive Rush and doing a normal, not only does that cover a huge distance, but when the normal actually connects, you're getting that improved frame advantage, 4 extra frames on hit or block. There's also a few characters like Jury or DJ who have extremely fast or far-reaching drive rushes, and those can be especially hard to deal with. Reacting to drive rush in neutral can be pretty tricky, especially depending on the character you're playing and the character they're playing, and it's not super rewarding a lot of the time. Usually you just kind of shut it down with a crouching medium kick. Also, one aspect of Drive Rush I've seen some people take issue with, although it's not something I've experienced myself, is the screen freeze. When the opponent uses Drive Rush, you're kind of frozen as well, and that apparently can kind of mess with your inputs. A big example I've seen is people trying to input parry during the screen freeze and getting like a crouching medium kick. Again, it's not something I've had any issue with, or if I did, I just never noticed it, but it's a bit tricky nonetheless. Drive Rush in general is quite tricky to deal with, but I think people will just get better and better at dealing with it over time. It's still really cool nonetheless, and on the whole, I really, really like it. I do have trouble with it sometimes, but I'm glad the mechanic is here nonetheless. It is very fun. On the whole though, I absolutely love the drive system, and for the record, EX moves are also tied to the drive gauge, although they're now called overdrive or OD moves, which, you know, I'm just going to ignore that. That's kind of goofy. But whatever. I'm a massive fan, and it creates a really interesting sense of resource management, which has been really fun to get used to. I was like really bad in other fighting games for like not checking my meter often enough, or like just not being able to adapt to how much meter I had on the fly. I find in Street Fighter VI I'm doing a much better job of that, and that's been very, very satisfying. And let me tell you, it is important to manage your drive gauge, because if you ever run out of it at any point in a match, you'll go into burnout. And burnout fucking sucks. When you do go into burnout, you're stuck in it for a long ass time. And while you're in it, you take 4 extra frames of block stun, Drive Impact will stun you in the corner, whether it hits or you block it, it doesn't matter. You lose access to Drive Impact and Drive Parry, and on top of all of that, chip damage also applies in burnout, and you can die from chip. And it's not like Street Fighter V where it's just supers that can chip you out. You can get chipped out by special moves again. Only in Burnout, but it's still pretty fucking scary. Also, speaking of supers, they are like an entirely separate resource, and I think that's fun. I like that. I like that there's quite a few install supers in this game. That's fun too. And JP's level 2 in particular is something I need to experiment with more. There's a lot of very funny stuff you can do with that. I haven't really looked into it. The main gripe I've seen people have with supers is that a lot of people aren't a fan of the length of the cinematic level 3s in this game. Personally, I'm fine with them. First of all, they all look really fucking good. Like, Street Fighter V had some lame-ass supers, Street Fighter 4 had some lame-ass ultras. This game doesn't really have that, I don't think. I at least like every single level 3. There's also, like, a practical reason for them being as long as they are, because, like, you regain drive gauge during it, and the opponent loses it. a lot of the time during my level 3, I'll find myself just like constantly staring at the drive gauge, trying to go and like kind of like, what's going on here? How's this gonna go? No, that's quite fun. On the whole though, I'm perfectly fine with the level 3s. Having to watch JP consistently choke the entire cast has made me realize some things about myself I don't think I was ready for, but that's okay. On the whole, pretty fucking good. So on the whole, I fucking love Street Fighter 6's gameplay. It has done so many things right, it is unbelievable. Combos are fun, neutral is fun. But what I will say is that this is a fucking stressful ass game, right? There's a lot to look out for, and you can lose a lot by not looking out for it. It's a lot to keep a track of, and it's weird. Usually that would kind of bug me. I'd find that very overwhelming. But I don't know if it's just that there's something about the game, or the fact that I play a character who is very comfortable, well out of range of all of that shit. It could be that. But something about Street Fighter 6 just makes it work for me. I'm not really sure why I feel this way in Street Fighter 6, because it kind of applies to every fighting game ever. But in Street Fighter 6, when I fuck up, I fail to react to something, or I just, you know, eat shit for some whatever reason, it really feels like my own fault in Street Fighter 6. And that's weird to say, obviously, fighting games are 1v1, everything bad that happens to you is your fault. But I don't know, in Street Fighter 6, I feel the best about it. I enjoy losing in Street Fighter 6 more than any other fighting game, and I'm not really sure why. Like, whenever I don't react to drive impact, I'm immediately thinking like, oh, I should have reacted to that. Here's everything I could have done if I did react to it, right? I'm never angry about bad things that happen to me. They just kind of happen to me, and I'm like, oh, I'll get them next time. I'm not going to let that happen again. Granted, half the time I do, but you know, it's the thought that counts. I think what also helps is that there's not a lot of stuff in Street Fighter 6 where you feel just completely overwhelmed, right? In some fighting games, you'll be put in scenarios where if you don't know how to get out, and the way of getting out might actually be quite specific, it feels pretty fucking bad. You're just kind of fucked. I never really felt that in 6, right? I felt like I could pretty quickly figure out how to get myself out of any pretty fucked up situation, and that's a nice feeling, right? It doesn't feel like you're getting knowledge checked over and over again, you know? It feels like at any given time you have some kind of an answer to anything the opponent could throw at you, and that's a good feeling. I don't know what it is, but something about Street Fighter 6 is really, really motivating. It feels like the game wants me to improve, and I feel it too. I want to get better at this game. It's fun. And like, listen, there's some fucked up stuff in this game. I play JP, I know all about that. But let's say you run across something that is actually just fucked up, and you gotta spend some time in the lab and figure that shit out. Well damn, there's no better game to do that in than Street Fighter 6. The training mode in Street Fighter 6 is truly some of the best in the business. Like, you've got your obvious stuff that's nice to have, you know? You've got being able to quickly swap screen positions, you've got in-game frame data, a recordable dummy, you know, all of that. Nice, good to have. But then you've got stuff that is just, like, truly above and beyond. And I think one of the best examples of that is this big old bar down here. So if you do a move while this bar is active, it'll clearly display things like the startup frames, the active frames, the recovery, the invincibility frames during a move, what type of invincibility is, like strike, throw, projectile, and like, this might seem a bit overwhelming to new players maybe, right? But it don't matter, because the game has a section where it fucking explains the bar, and it's very readable, very nicely laid out. There's so much handy shit you can put on the screen, it's unreal. You've got this little bar that shows when you'll be actionable again, when you can start buffering another move. You can make your character turn red during cancel windows. And like, there's so many neat little things to practice specific scenarios, right? There's a bunch of like preset options where you can practice defending against specific things like drive impact, for example, or practicing anti-airs. These are pretty simple, but I think for new players, these are fantastic. And it's just so nice that something like this is here. And again, these aren't like specific mini games or anything like that. These are just presets. So they're just an example of what you can do with like the recording and replay system in this game. It's really something else. The only things I can think of that are like potentially missing from training mode in Street Fighter 6 are, first of all, a hitbox and hurtbox viewer, and you know what, fine, maybe for whatever reason they just don't want to share that information, you know, it's their own business, and replay takeover. This might be a bit of a stretch, because like the only fighting game I'm aware of that has this is Plus R, but in Plus R you can basically like, while watching a replay, take it over and sort of create your own like, oh well, what if I did this scenario? It's really incredible. It's one of the best features I've ever seen in a fighting game. And while Street Fighter VI doesn't have that, it does have something that's kind of a nice compensation. You can see frame advantage during replays. So you can see, like, whether you're plus, whether the opponent is minus in certain situations. It's nice for figuring out whether, like, pressure sequences the opponent is doing are fake or not.
That's not real!
Also, on top of the already great stuff that's available in training mode for new players, there's also, like, character guides and combo trials. These are nothing new, but I think they're done exceptionally well in this game. The guides aren't just like a bland run-through of every single special move a character has. No, they actually like explain key tools of the character, and like as they go through every single special move, they explain what it's for and how the different versions can be used in different scenarios. The character guides in Street Fighter VI are, no joke, decent fucking character guides, which is just kind of wild to think about. Another amazing aspect of the character guides is that a lot of them are, at least to some degree, delivered in character. It's as if the character themselves is teaching you how to play them, which is just adorable. It's such a nice touch. In the jungle, crouching medium punch and crouching medium kick are what we use most.
This extraordinary creature is half blind, half deaf.
Also, we can't just talk about stuff meant to help new players and such without touching on modern controls. I won't lie, I was worried about this. Leading up to Street Fighter VI, I was legitimately worried that modern controls were gonna just outright outclass classic controls, and that OG players would be switching to modern because they had to. You know, top 8 was gonna be like 7 modern Lukes, but luckily, no, it doesn't seem like that's how it's turned out. If anything, what's actually happened seems to be the best case scenario. Modern is actually great for new players. It is a simpler control scheme, there's no way around it, and while there are some valuable assets of Modern that are attractive to experienced players, like one-button supers and such, it clearly doesn't outclass Classic. Outclass Classic? Ooh, that didn't sound right. But still, Modern seems just fine. However, I do like that Modern isn't significantly worse than Classic in most cases. Like, Classic does seem to be better overall, obviously. But it's not like Modern is garbage or anything. You do miss out on some key tools, but again, there's some things it has going for it, and it's not like new players using Modern are going to be that far behind new players sticking with Classic. I think the only downfall of Modern is that there's some characters who just kinda don't really mesh well with it. Some like Geef, Lily, Luke, they can do some pretty cool shit with Modern, but characters like JP or Chun-Li, it's just not quite clicking. You miss out on like too many key tools for it to really be worthwhile at all. That's a bit of a shame, but overall I'm happy with how Modern has turned out. I didn't use it much myself, mostly just for the first chapter of World Tour where you're fucking forced to use it for some reason, but aside from that, it seems like a great addition. And while Classic and Modern players are out here just, you know, tearing each other to fucking shreds, chatting shit about one another, there's also Dynamic, and Dynamic's just having the time of its life. You can't use Dynamic online, so it makes sense people aren't really talking about it, but I don't think Dynamic is really meant for people who would be that interested in playing online in the first place. Dynamic really is kind of just the little brother mode. You slap the shit out of buttons and things just happen. Something like this is important to have, and I think it's been done very well. You love to see it. With how much there is in the game when it comes to teaching new players things and making things accessible, it's very clear that Street Fighter VI is a game that wants you to have as much fun as possible, regardless of your skill level. And shit, man, that's pretty fucking cool. And I think it does a pretty great job. And another factor in that is World Tour. Now, I won't lie, I didn't play as much World Tour as I probably should have in preparation for this. I don't know, I just don't play a ton of single player games, it's how I am. I play a couple on stream. Love me Animal Crossing, love me Pikmin, simple as fucking hell! 30 for a screw? But other than that, I don't know, it's just not really for me. But that's fine, because the absolute best thing about World Tour is the fact that it exists. It's no secret that fighting games are not exactly known for their single player. Shit, maybe back in the PS2 days you'd get some cool shit, but I don't know, they've kind of been fumbling the bag for a while now. Maybe you get a 4-hour cutscene, shit, if you're lucky you might get a 4-hour cutscene with some gameplay every now and again, with the unfortunate downside of the cutscene being boring as shit. But luckily, World Tour is just really something else. The gameplay in World Tour is not like groundbreaking or anything, but it doesn't need to be. It's just dumb fun. You run around this big old world beating up random people. It's just dumb fun, and I'm all for it, honestly. It's fun being able to make your own silly little character, and I know you see these like absolute freaks of nature that people come up with, but like, it is just a really good character creator with a ton of options.
Hit the streets.
Yeah, sorry, give me a second. Does my bad bitch look better with 47 cheek or 48? Another really nice aspect of World Tour is being able to meet the main cast and like actually interact with them to some degree. There's a really nice bit of like character building here. You can bring them gifts and stuff and they'll, you know, tell you about their past, tell you little fun facts about themselves. It's just really nice to see this kind of character growth in Street Fighter. Like, just as an example, right? The old arcade routes are back. That's another single-player thing you can do. And they're grand, I think. It's very similar to Street Fighter V's little story modes. Like, you fight some people, you watch a couple little cutscenes. They have that same issue where they cut off just as soon as they're getting interesting, which is a real shame. Ken's like, dude, am I gonna fucking kill this dude? And then it just fades to black. Manon and Marissa's stories cut off before they make out in the middle of the Coliseum. That might be a bug. Hopefully they can sort that out soon. But World Tour does a lot to remedy that. It's really nice getting to learn more about these characters and them, you know, forming some sort of a bond with you and, you know, getting the opportunity to learn more about them. It's just nice. I love these characters, and this just makes me love them even more. And it's really made me appreciate a lot of characters that I previously didn't really care for. I mean, shit, I like Blanka now. He's the only other character other than JP that I really want to try. It's just fun hearing him talk about how Blanka-chan is a cryptid and how, you know, he's trying to convince you that movies aren't real. Come on, Blanka, don't do me like that. I know better. While World Tour might not completely be for me, it's just nice seeing so many people who wouldn't really be down for the kind of Street Fighter experience I'm looking for, be able to enjoy Street Fighter. I enjoy seeing people talk about the funny stuff in World Tour. I like seeing people interact over how nice it is that Ryu can't use a phone. I like seeing people turn around on Luke and start to really appreciate him. I like seeing people enjoy that Cammy likes cats, enjoy that you can beat up random people in the street, enjoy that, like, Jury actually opens up to you a little bit. It's just really nice to see, even if it's not entirely for me. There's also a lot here for the Capcom heads. There's a lot of fun little references, and you can meet some characters who are like very minor Street Fighter characters who haven't had a playable appearance. That's a nice little touch, that's cute. If I had to point out a few negatives, I will say that the performance on PC is quite shaky. It's been perfectly fine for me in every other aspect of the game, but in World Tour it's a little rough. I can't speak for performance on other consoles. I've heard it's perfectly fine on PS5, and I have played the PS4 version, but not World Tour, just, you know, traditional battles. And that felt pretty good, to be fair. I enjoyed it. The only thing that was really noticeable was the loading times, but other than that, perfectly playable. However, one aspect of World Tour I'm not over the moon about is the fact that, as of right now, characters' alternate costumes are locked behind World Tour. If you want to unlock them, you have to, like, max out your bond with that specific character, and then you get the alternate costume for that character. That's kind of annoying in my opinion. Like, again, the best aspect of World Tour is the fact it's there for people who want that experience. But I'm not really that person. I want to play the other half of the game. So, like, what the fuck do I do? Well, unfortunately, there is something I can do, but we'll touch on that in a minute. It's especially annoying for me because the only one I really wanted was JP's, and, like, to interact with JP, you need to beat the entire fucking story mode, which is a bit of a bummer, but it is what it is. Very well, I shall teach you everything I know, but first, I need you to collect 5 Ryu coins scattered throughout the land.
Well done!
Now, speaking of that other half of the game that, you know, is more suited to me, where'd my fucking choker go? How long have I not been wearing that? Fuck it, whatever, dude, it's grand. Playing people online. That's pretty fucking fun in this video game, because let me tell you, the online is actually some, like, black magic in this. I've no idea, I've never seen netcode like this. Street Fighter VI's netcode is actually like a fucking miracle. I've no idea how they got it like this. Obviously, if you're playing someone close to you, it's just pretty much flawless. But I've had, like, perfectly smooth games with people from the US, like, people on Wi-Fi from the US even. It's just a fucking miracle. You could play practically anybody and it feels like, at the very least, playable. It's legitimately unreal. And on top of the netcode being great, you've plenty of options when it comes to how you play people online. For a start, you've got the Battle Hub, which is its own fully fleshed out mode. And I didn't sink too much time into this originally. On day 1, I hopped in the Battle Hub just because custom lobbies were down. So, like, you know, we were making do with what we had. And they were fixed the very next day, so no biggie. But when I got around to actually sinking some time into the Battle Hub, I was surprised by how much I liked it. Now, plenty of fighting games have attempted something like the Battle Hub. This big old lobby that you and a bunch of other players walk around, you know, walk up to cabinets, wait for games. Plenty of other games have tried that. And for the most part, they fumble the bag pretty fucking hard. Like, yeah, there's some novelty to it, but when you just want to fucking hop online, it's a bit of a pain in the ass. But I don't really think that applies to the Battle Hub. There's 2 key reasons why this works for Street Fighter VI. The first one is that the Battle Hub actually fucking works, and the second one is that it's completely optional. As functional as it is, I think if Battle Hub was the only way to play online in Street Fighter VI, I'd get fucking bored of it pretty quickly. Like, yeah, it is fun, there's a nice charm to it, it's fun seeing everyone's avatars, you know, and there's that whole little thing at the back where you can play other Street Fighter games, that's cute and all, but, you know, at the end of the day, sometimes you just want to click some buttons and hop online, that's all there is to it. And you can do that. The Battle Hub is entirely superfluous, it's just a thing that you can hop on for fun. The Battle Hub is absolutely not my go-to way of playing Street Fighter VI online. But it's a really nice change of pace, and I think something like this being a change of pace rather than the way to play the game online is fantastic. It's just nice that it's here, again, similar to World Tour. And of course, if you want those more convenient ways of playing Street Fighter VI online, you can hop in Fighting Ground, and you can go to casual, ranked, custom lobbies. That's great, and they work just fine for the most part, we'll touch on that. The best change that this game makes compared to Street Fighter V, right out the gate, is casual. Because no more forced first to 2. Thank fucking Christ. You can just find people and play them as much as you want. Simple change that does so fucking much. I can actually just find people I enjoy and keep playing them. Thank you, Capcom. That was like my #1 biggest problem with Street Fighter V, and wouldn't you know it, they fucking fixed it. Cool. And weirdly enough, I actually really enjoyed Ranked. I usually don't like playing Ranked that much, I just find it kind of stressful. But again, me wanting to improve in this game so much for some reason, I actually kind of clicked with Ranked, and I had a great time with it. Like, originally I got placed in Gold 3, and I figured I'd just, like, scrape my way up to Plat and then never touch Ranked again. Funny story, I'm currently on Diamond 2, and I'm looking to go even higher. I'm having the time of my fucking life, I don't know why. Private lobbies are also fantastic. One small issue with them is that you can't change character while you're in a lobby. That's a bit of a shame, but other than that, they're fantastic, and most notably, you can have more than one battle going on at a time in one lobby. That's a massive change, I greatly appreciate that. Now granted, while I've had a pretty good time with it, some people have had issues with the matchmaking in this game, and I'll touch on that in a second, because before I wrap this up and talk about my final thoughts on the game as a whole so far, I'd like to touch on some of the bad stuff, because not everything about this game is perfect, that's for sure. The game does unfortunately have a premium currency, and I mentioned earlier that there was another way of getting the alternate costumes other than World Tour, and unfortunately, this is it, which isn't amazing. It's not the most egregious monetization I've seen in a game, but you hate to see it regardless. This game also has a battle pass for some reason. It wasn't active when the game first released, and now that it's out, I'm not even completely sure how it works. I've never played a game with a battle pass, but I've just hated the idea, conceptually. But in this game, it's just kind of bizarre. It's just there in the background, and every now and again the game is like, oh, you leveled up your battle pass, and I'm like, I've leveled up my what now? There's also a premium battle pass, but I don't know, it seems like all you really get from this is stuff for your avatar, which, you know, that's cute and all, but I don't really care. So, while it's weird that it's here, and obviously the game would be better off without it, it's not super egregious, I think. More just weird than anything. Two pretty big issues that haven't really affected me, but I should probably mention regardless, are issues with the matchmaking and the input reader. From what I understand, the game sort of region locks you while you're queued up for casual or ranked, and as a result, the pool of people that you can actually get paired with is smaller than it should be. Like, you can end up playing the same person a couple times in a row on ranked, which isn't exactly ideal. I don't know, it's a bit of a strange case, and it does make the wait between games longer, especially for people in Masters, so, you know, I don't exactly have to worry about that yet. It's not really an issue I've had myself, although I have had the odd time where casual or ranked just kind of wouldn't work. They were pretty infrequent, and they were grand when I came back after an hour or so, but I don't know, it is a little odd, and whatever's going on here, it should ideally be fixed. Again, the issues with the input reader are something I haven't really experienced, but a lot of people have been mentioning. Basically, you're inputting one thing with the intention of getting a move, and you're getting another move. I kind of lucked out here because JP only has quarter circles and down-down motions for his special moves, which actually, while I'm thinking about it, one thing that's kind of interesting about this game is there's a lot of down-down inputs for special moves. Those are typically pretty rare in Street Fighter, and this game has a lot of them. I'm not sure how people feel about that. I'd be quite curious. I personally really like it, but I might be biased because I play on hitbox, so those motions are extremely easy for me. Let me know what you think if you've been having issues with them. But yeah, it mainly seems to be an issue for characters with DPs, so I'm safe in that regard. But I will say, it feels like I've gotten more accidental supers in this game than any other fighting game. Now, that might just be me fucking up and, like, instinctively blaming it on the input reader. But I don't know, it happens more often than I'd like to admit. You might have heard about this one because people were talking about it a lot just before the game came out on PC. But the PC port of this game has Denuvo in it. I don't know a whole lot about Denuvo, but the TLDR is that it's an anti-piracy thing that gets slapped onto a game and fucks with the performance a little bit. Especially on PCs that would, like, just about be able to run the game. Again, on the first day I played this game, the performance was, like, significantly worse than it is now. Maybe that was Denuvo's fault, I'm not really sure. If you've had issues with performance in this game and, like, you didn't have them in the demo, that might be Denuvo's fault, and if that's the case, that's very unfortunate. The only other issue I can think of off the top of my head is the music, which a lot of people really don't care for, but I do think it's worth noting that a lot of people did a 180 on it when the game actually came out, including myself. The music in Street Fighter VI typically isn't music that I would go out of my way to listen to, like Street Fighter V, which I think had an amazing soundtrack. I didn't actually mention that in the Street Fighter V video. But while playing the game, I actually quite like Street Fighter VI's music. It's weird, like I said, I wouldn't go out of my way to listen to it, but while I'm playing the game and listening to it, I think it works. I think the dynamic music helps a lot, you know, as it changes from round to round, if you've got low health, if it's the last round. I think that's a really, really nice touch. With those negatives out of the way though, I cannot stress enough how happy I am with Street Fighter VI. I am absolutely loving every second of this game. And if I had to sum up why I love it so much, I think it's because Street Fighter VI feels like my first completely uncompromised fighting game experience. I'm not ready to say Street Fighter VI is my favorite fighting game. There are fighting games that I might have more fun playing, I'm not totally sure. But what separates Street Fighter VI from those games is how convenient it is. A lot of my favorite fighting games, I have to, like, jump through hoops to play it. You know, I'll have to ping a Discord or Brave Fightcade chat. Street Fighter VI is just not like that at all. I can boot up the game, and within a minute, I'm having fun with a random stranger on the internet, and I can play them as much as I want. Or until they leave, but that's neither here nor there. I do play JP, so that happens a lot. I'm just kind of floored by how smooth my experience with Street Fighter VI has been. The matchmaking, at least for me, was perfectly fine. The netcode is incredible, and I have multiple ways of playing online. I could hop on casual, I could hop on ranked, I could hit someone up and ask if they want to play in a lobby, I could jump on the battle hub. I have so many options, and I really, really enjoy all of them. And those are just the options that appeal to me. There's so many options in this game for people who might not be accustomed to that. World Tour, you know, maybe you enjoy playing the retro games in the battle hub. Maybe you enjoy playing avatar battles in the battle hub. Maybe you enjoy Extreme Battle. Maybe you're using dynamic controls and you're just smacking buttons and seeing what happens. It's just so nice to see a game do so many things right in a series I love. And more importantly, to see so many other people enjoying a game in a series I love. It's been so nice to just see, like, near universal praise regarding Street Fighter VI. Obviously, there are people who don't like the game. That's gonna happen. And I'd imagine a lot of people might have been excited for this game, played it, and then the gameplay just didn't click with them, and maybe they're feeling a little bit left out right now, and if that's true, that's a bit of a shame. I'm sorry you're not enjoying it, but I'm pretty happy myself. But overall, I'm just absolutely floored with this game. Like, there are issues, I already mentioned them, but a lot of them are issues that I haven't personally been having, or things that are kind of, you know, a little out the way. Like I said, the monetization is annoying, but at least it's pretty low-key. The Battle Pass is weird. It's like buried in menus. Like, you wouldn't even find out about it unless you actually went out of your way to look for it. It's very bizarre. And there's some small things like, yeah, maybe the music's not always that great. Or, like, the UI can be a little clunky, especially when, like, receiving invites to lobbies and such. It's a bit bizarre. But on the whole, I've just had such an overwhelmingly wonderful experience with Street Fighter VI. It's been so long since I had a game like Street Fighter VI where, when I'm playing it, I'm nearly always having fun, and when I'm not playing it, I'm thinking about playing it and what I'll do when I do eventually get the chance to play it. This game's always on my mind, and shit, that feels nice. And one thing I want to say just before we finish out is that I know I made a lot of comparisons to Street Fighter V in this video, and I just want to stress that everything I said in my Street Fighter V video does hold up. It's not like I started playing Street Fighter VI, turned and looked at Street Fighter V and went, ugh, I used to play that shit? No, I still love Street Fighter V for what it is, and the game did a lot for me. But I am looking forward so much to continuing my adventure with Street Fighter VI, and I really hope all of you are too. But with all that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm gonna go play Street Fighter VI.